Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we're going to talk about the new Typhus model for the Death Guard. We've got a nice, lovely, clear, well-lit picture of it on the Warhammer community site, which you will see in a moment. Before we get into this properly, you can already tell what this video is about. It's the fact that I actually kind of don't like the new Typhus figure. I really wanted to, and I was really looking forward to seeing a new Typhus model, but it's just not grabbed me. Now, I'm not going into this with the intention of changing your mind. I don't want you to change your mind. If you like it, if you love it, then good. That's good. All of this stuff is incredibly subjective and opinion-based. And so what I want to do is basically lay out my issues with the model, the things that I don't feel, maybe not work is like a bit harsh, that don't fit what I imagined personally. And I want to know if you really like it. I want to know if you don't like it. Do you dislike it for the same reasons I do? Do you have your own reasons? Do you feel I've missed the point in the model? Because there's something else as well. As we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, I feel like I've missed something here. And if I have indeed missed that, I want to know what it is that I've missed. And I want you guys to tell me. I realise that when I say this is supposed to be a conversation, it's a little bit one-sided because I'm the one with the camera and the microphone. But you get what I mean. I want to see responses to this. I'm not here to make you think it's terrible. If anything, I'm here because I want someone to tell me what they see in it, what they think is so great about it, because you never know. It might actually suddenly click and I'll go, oh no, he's right, that is quite good. Anyway, let's get into it. So, right about now, you will see the brand new Typhus model on the screen, provided I remember to edit in, which I should do because that's my job. And let's start with the good. Let's start with the good. Firstly, I have to say I really like the added detail on his scythe. I will say that I really like that. The extra kind of pits and notches on the actual scythe blade itself, I think are really well done. And I like the added kind of, I guess the roughness of the shape, that little spike on the top, and you know, it feels more like a weapon than the old Typhus's scythe. And I mean, to be honest, that's an issue that I've had with Mortarion and Typhus, and really the idea of power scythes to begin with. Let's be honest, as a weapon, they're terrible. They suck. They would not make a good weapon at all. But they look badass. They look cool as hell. And that is the important thing, because this is Warhammer 40k, where you give soldiers the best armour in the world, then equip them with a chainsaw and tell them to charge into vast numbers of enemy forces. It really doesn't matter that it wouldn't be a good weapon. The important thing is that it looks like a cool weapon. And now, I have to say, that scythe looks like a cool weapon. The old one, it did have a nice sort of, I guess, agricultural feel, but this sort of has that traditional-ish shape, not wholly, obviously, because it's a bloody power scythe, but I don't know, it seems to have something that the old one lacked. It's got a bit more personality, it's got a bit more feel to it. I also really like the head of the new Typhus. I really like the amount of detail, the fact that they can do much more detailed stuff now, and it essentially comes out looking as good as this, means that finally, I feel like Typhus has got a really nice sort of a focal point in terms of the facial features of his helmet, like the front part of the faceplate, the mask bit. The horn is got a little bit bigger, but I don't mind that, you know, I think it looks alright. And I wouldn't paint it that colour myself, personally, but again, I just like the overall feel of it a lot more than the old one. Same for the funnels on the back, I've got to say, I think the funnels on the back look absolutely fantastic. They feel more organic. Now, that's obviously helped by the paint job, because they've been painted as bone instead of as metal for this particular one, but I don't know, it feels a bit more seamless. It feels like an eruption of something as opposed to something that's kind of always been there, which is the feeling that I got from the old Typhus model, which actually will stick in the corner as a nice reference, nice comparison between the two. I have to say as well, at first, the fact that it's cataphractii armour, I was like, I don't like it, the shoulders look weird. The shoulders don't look like Typhus's shoulders, because of course, the old Typhus, there was not really anything in the way of cataphractii armour around when he was designed. There was no model for it, there was no basis for it, there was no real decent anything for it. And so he had essentially just normal Terminator armour. I like the fact that Typhus now has the correct armour on. It makes my inner sort of detail person very, very happy, because it's like, they've got it right now. That's nice. Didn't matter so much before, but since Forge World came out with the Typhus model, and in the books it was like, well, yeah, he's wearing cataphractii armour, yeah, that's better. That's way better. Or at least a variation of it. I know it's not exactly the same, but you get what I mean. It's the same sort of general pattern, it's just been changed a little bit. Whatever. However, that unfortunately is kind of where it ends for me. I like the fact he's wearing the right armour, I like the helmet, I like the scythe, and I like the funnels, but there's something about the overall composition of this thing that just does not do it for me at all. And I've been racking my brain trying to work out what it is. And I think it's a combination of two things. I think there's a lot going on. I mean, that can be said of a lot of the Death Guard stuff right now. They are, I think, a little bit over-designed, a little bit over-modelled. They have more paraphernalia than you know what to do with, and in some of them, in the case of some, I think it works really well. There's a couple of specific Death Guard models that I really like, even though they are ridiculously covered in stuff. That one of the guys out of the Dark Imperium box that has a backpack that's got about 18 exhausts coming off it. In theory, sounds terrible. It sounds like it'd be like massively overweight. It sounds like it would just be awkward and unwieldy. I actually really like it. I think it gives that model a lot of personality, and it gives it that hunched sort of implacable feel that the Death Guard should give. I've got so used to seeing Typhus in his hunched over kind of state, in that like the model has always had that kind of hunched look. I guess I kind of associate that hunched over, both hands on the weapon kind of appearance with the kind of implacable nature of the Death Guard themselves. When I look at the old Typhus model, yeah, it's not fancy, it's not particularly dynamic, but it looks like it's just going to keep coming for you. And I really like that aspect of it. Now, whether that was intentional when it was being designed or not, that's a completely separate discussion, but that's the impression that I've always got. There's something about the pose and the busyness of the new one that just doesn't give me that same sensation of, this is something that is just going to hunt you down. Like, this is something that you can keep firing at, you can keep shooting, you can keep throwing men at it. It doesn't matter. It's going to get you eventually, and when it does, it is going to kill you. I just don't get that feeling from this model. And for me, feeling is a huge part of what makes a model good or bad. I mean, to start with, Mortarion, I just wasn't feeling. I was like, I mean, it looks kind of cool, but there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff floating off him, and if he's landing, then it doesn't really make any sense because it's all like hanging down, and surely it would be more directional. Actually, as soon as someone pointed out, are you sure he isn't taken off, or he isn't sort of gliding forwards? As soon as I changed my perspective on what the model is supposed to be doing, that altered the feel for me completely. I was like, oh no, actually that looks really good. That looks really good. It has that sort of purposeful determination that I look for when it comes to things like Death Guard. Iron Warriors is another one. I just don't get that from this Typhus. The combination of kind of... See, this is one of the main problems. I was going to try and describe what his pose says to me, and I can't. And that's a huge part of whether a model succeeds or fails for me personally. If I can look at something and go, oh, that's what he's doing. Even that crazy, weird Primaris, what was it? I think it's one of the squad leaders from the Dark Imperium box, where he's got a bolter in his hand, but it's down, and then he's got his other hand out in the middle of nowhere. It looks a bit off at first. When I realised that his bolt pistol was on his hip, I was like, oh, okay, so he's reaching for his bolt pistol. That changed the feel of that model. It went from, why is that dude like dancing, to it looks like he's about to go full gunslinger on someone, which, you know, on balance is kind of dumb because he's holding his bolter in the other hand, but it gave that feel that was missing. With this model, with this Typhus model, I can't get the right feel from it because I cannot tell what he's doing. For me, if he was doing some sort of psycho-based thing, if he was producing some sort of horrendous swarm of flies, he would be pointing the scythe at something, or he'd be pointing his other hand at something. But he's not. He's got his scythe in the air, and he's got his other hand kind of out with the palm spread. If that's what he is doing, I would expect whatever he was looking at to be the focus of things like the flies that are coming out of the back, like the bloat flies, whatever they're called. But they're not going in the direction that he's looking, they're not heading off in the direction that his scythe is pointing, and they're not coming out of where his hand is facing. So there's like multiple weird things going on with the perspective of the model and where it's aiming, I guess. Of course, not every model needs to be aiming explicitly at something, but there's a focus point for me that is just not there for Typhus, because if you look at his face, he is looking one way. The flies that are coming around the side of him are going a different way. The Nurgling on the front of him is looking a different way from both his face and the flies, and that combined with one hand being down and out, one arm being up and raised, his foot being on the rock and kind of almost like leaning back slightly, I just cannot tell what he's doing. Like, there's no distinct silhouette there. There's nothing there that makes me go, okay, that's what that guy is all about. It feels like a combination of everything, and I don't feel it works that well. I think if his scythe was being pointed in the same direction he was looking, even with all the extra detail, I would like it a lot more. If his hand was pointing in the direction that his face was looking, or if his hand was doing something else, if it was in a position other than palm out but kind of aimed towards the ground, that would give it more of a focus as to what it's actually doing. But as it stands, I don't know. Like, he's looking over there, the flies are looking there, the Nurgling's looking the other way, his hand is out as though he's about to fall over, but his other arm's up, pointing his scythe toward the sky. He's not about to attack something, or at least if he is, I don't think that's going to land. He's not about to try and direct anything by the look of it. If he is, then I don't know what it is he's trying to direct. There's just something that's off about the composition of the model as a whole. It feels like they've combined lots of different elements, but they haven't actually created a proper pose for it, and I think that's where a lot of the problem lies. Now, the problem that I have in terms of that is, if it weren't for the fact we had other Death Shroud Terminators, okay, so I'll pull up a couple of I'll pull up some of the other Death Shroud Terminators. Now, admittedly, the two in the back, they are obviously very similar in pose to the old Typhus model, and I mean, I do like them, but that's not why I like them. They have a purposefulness about them that the new Typhus for me lacks. Even the guy at the front. Now, I would say the dude at the front, if Typhus had that pose, I think pretty much any complaint I had about the model would be gone completely. Because he's more directional, he's more focused, he just has a purpose that the new Typhus lacks. Now, the good thing is that because all of the Death Guard stuff is so well sculpted and so well done, you could probably kit bash yourself a really nice Typhus out of any of these Death Shroud models. Like, if you wanted to make a traditional old school Typhus, scythe in both hands, you could absolutely do it. It's worth pointing out as well, just before we shift on to the other thing that grabbed me. The old school Typhus, it wasn't just the pose of the scythe being held in... Well, he wouldn't be holding it like that, would he? Being held sort of in both hands, that made that model so good for me. Because you could change that, and people had changed it. And as you see down there, there's a really nice conversion that someone did where Typhus is standing in a very similar way, in fact, to the new Typhus model. But the scythe is being rested on the ground. The hand that isn't gripping the scythe has a purpose of its own. It's not just out there doing nothing. And because of the direction that he's looking and the way that he stood and the lack of other elements going in different ways, he still has that purposeful look. He still looks like he's doing something. He still looks like he's going somewhere. But he doesn't have to have that same static pose. So the other thing that I will say is that the other Terminators, the other Death Guard Terminators, weirdly, there's one in there that could make a really, really nice Typhus model. And that is the guy with the big old ball of delight on a chain there. I've forgotten what weapon that is. But that, if you modelled on the funnels, if you switched out the big ball and chain for the scythe, if you swapped out the head, that would, to me, make a perfect, like a properly perfect kind of new interpretation of the old Typhus figure. And I think the main problem I'm having is when I look at the new Typhus model, when I then look at the new Death Shroud, when I look at the other lot, I kind of look at them and go, oh, he could have looked like that. That looks better than the pose he ended up with. I think the model is probably fine, but I cannot find the feel that I really want from Typhus, from the way that he's been posed, the way that he doesn't seem to have any sort of action or reaction to him. It's just kind of like... And outside of statues, I don't think it looks great, and I think that's the main problem I have with it. But this is why I brought it to you. Now, obviously, that's incredibly nitpicky, but when it comes to things like the centerpieces of your army, although I know Mortarion is going to be the centerpiece of every Death Guard army ever, but you cannot overlook Typhus, because Typhus is the man. He is quality, he is awesome, and if you're going to have a Typhus in your army, you want to be happy with him. As it stands, I wouldn't be happy with that Typhus in my army. But this is why I brought it to you. Have I missed something? Like, have I looked at the model and I've missed something that would, I guess, bring it into focus for me, that would give me the enthusiasm that I'm not getting from it right now? Do you dislike it for the same reasons? Do you like it for different reasons? Do you actually really like the pose? Does it say something to you that it doesn't to me? And if so, what is it? I want you to let me know in the comments below, because like I said, I want this is just like a conversation thing. I want to know what you think of this, whether you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, why don't you agree with me? Tell me what I've missed, because I want to know. Because god damn it, I want to love Typhus. I want to love Typhus's model, because Typhus is awesome, and yeah, who doesn't like Typhus anyway? So yeah, let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. There's a bunch of other stuff all over the screen to click. You can click it if you like, don't have to click it if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you, and I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.